I've got a team of brilliant and terrifyingly clever data scientists, and they have just built a model that shows how advertising on TV affects price sensitivity, and therefore basically increases your margin. So it's not about volume sales, it's about basically defending your price in the wake of kind of lots of competition.
Interesting.
So we are not far away from being able to say, when you advertise on TV, this is what you can expect to see in terms of performance. So actually we have a tool which is called Outcomes Planner. Does exactly what it says on the tin.
Nice, we call that company the marketing meetup. So
We can't judge. Fans of that. But essentially what you do is you tell it what category you're in, you tell it how much money you think you've got to spend, and it will tell you what you can expect in terms of, website traffic uplift, for example. So often actually small and medium-sized businesses, and particularly digital native brands, will come to us and go, there's something really weird going on. So I've noticed that when I'm on TV, my CPAs in social go down. Why is that? To which the answer is, well, because actually what TV does is it just lifts everything. It's the kind of rising tide that lifts all boats. And so once you have those kind of slightly more holistic forms of measurement in place, we can point to all of these effects that TV has.
Welcome to your CMO Mentor, the podcast where we ask some of the most senior and most amazing people the advice they'll give if you came to them for mentorship. And in today's episode, we have Kate Waters, who is the commercial director over at ITV. And we had a really, really interesting chat about telly. So, James, what did we speak about?
Well, Kate did something really quite cool, which was take television, which wasn't even in my brain when it comes to marketing, and brought it right to the forefront as a really accessible, really effective and trustworthy platform that marketers should be considering. And it wasn't that she was doing a sales job on us necessarily, but actually I could just feel myself getting excited about the opportunity that marketers have with television.
I think it was just like that. Like, we were quite self-conscious in the episode, I think, when we were interviewing, that we didn't want to come across as advocates for anything in particular. But one of the joys of doing this is about finding out about things and being curious about it. And so Kate came on and was speaking about some advancements in the telly sort of space and how we can advertise and access it as marketers, which was just it was just interesting. And so I think we both came out of the interview educated on this, which was exciting. And Kate was great as well. She was really, really nice.
Yeah, she's dead smart.
Really smart. Yeah, smarter than us. So we really hope you enjoy the episode.
Yeah. And before we jump into the episode, we're going to do one of those little sponsor reads. So cue the sponsor read. We're going to make this quite quick, but it's going to be good because our sponsor for this episode is a company called Weglot. What are they talking about at the moment, Joe?
So Weglot are doing something really, really cool at the moment, which is they're running something called an accelerator, which is they're going to be helping 5 companies go international with their marketing activities. They're providing mentorship, events, content, strategies, all to help any company that wants to go international go through that process. As I say, it's limited to 5 companies. The application process opens on February the 23rd. So if you want to be part of it, then check out the podcast notes and we'll link to the accelerator. It's phenomenal.
In the description. Yeah. Thanks, Weglot.
Really good. So we'll work on the assumption that we've said lots of lovely things about you in the introduction and sort of spoken about your job title and the brilliance of your humanity as well. So that's been cleared as table stakes. So we start off with a quick fire round.
Okay.
Where we speak a little bit about your experience of mentorship and everything that goes with it. And so the first question is, if you're starting out in marketing today, what skills would you be looking to cultivate for yourself?
If I was starting out in marketing, so I think first and foremost, I think for any marketer, probably for any job, is curiosity. So it's the number one thing that I look for in anybody that I recruit. So I think curiosity about the world, about marketing, about just life in general, because that's the sort of seed for all, I think, inspiration and ideas and all those sorts of things. So I think that's that first and foremost. I guess the other obvious and most boring thing that I could say is somebody who knows how to use AI. like really understands how to use it and really is, curious about that and curious about learning. So I guess right now that would be the thing that I would look for, because that is going to transform our working lives more than anything else, I think, that we could possibly imagine. So I think if you haven't got that coming into the industry, then that's going to be extraordinarily tough for you. But if you've got that fundamental curiosity about the world and about the working world and about your job, then hopefully that kind of comes with it.
Love it.
That's really cool. The second question in our quickfire is about behaviour traits.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to know what behaviour traits you really admire in marketers that work with you. And you've probably got somebody in your team who is an A player, and what's the thing that makes them stand out?
Okay, that's really interesting. So I think that people who listen is really, that's not necessarily a marketing thing. It's just a work thing.
Yeah.
Right. So people who listen and who you can see are listening really intently and active listening. So that's something that I always really look for. And the skill that I don't know if it's a behavioural skill, the thing that I admire most, in other people, which I find really hard, which is a bit absurd given how long I've been in the industry, is chairing meetings. I just get really freaked out. So I'm totally fine. You can ask me to do almost anything in a meeting, but that whole kind of like opening a meeting, and for some reason it just sends me into flat spin panic. So I can remember when I was first became part of WACL, which is this kind of network for senior women. And one of the things I always used to do is watch whoever was chairing the meeting and literally take notes about how they did it. Yeah, so there you go, chairing meetings. People who have the kind of poise and confidence and kind of that quiet authority. I guess that's maybe at the heart of it.
Nice. And so I am curious, like, we shouldn't be asking follow-up questions in the quickfire, but this is our
We're going to do it.
We'll
do what we want.
When you're observing those folks opening a meeting, what were some of the sort of things that you observed or admired or sort of took away from those?
So one of the things that I do very badly is keep to time.
Right.
And even though I now know this, I never quite put it into practice. But one of those people, I noticed that what she did was she always sat opposite the clock in the room, which is a really good sort of like little tip, because then actually you don't have to self-consciously look at your watch or your phone or whatever it might be to see if you're on track. You can just kind of have a slight of a glance straight ahead.
I love that.
So that was a really smart thing, which I still somehow forget to do. And also there are no longer clocks in meeting rooms, which I've discovered. But that was a very good thing. And I think the other thing is just that sense of having real clarity about what you're there to achieve, and the role that different people are going to play, and being very good at knowing when to kind of bring people in, also just spot those sorts of, just spot, I suppose it's just the humanity, spot the kind of dynamics and stuff. And what I always forget, so I always used to just get so flustered with trying to remember like what it is we're there to do and to try and make sure that we stick to time that I'd completely forget, for example, to get people to introduce themselves. Just like really sort of like basic things. So it's once we get going, I'm all fine, but that first sort of like 5 minutes, just still slightly panicky about it.
There's such a wonderful answer there. It's really, truly, because so the first one when you're speaking about listening, the interesting thing about that is that our very first episode was with Andrew Monu from LinkedIn, and that was his answer as well. And so I think the joy of this quickfire round is to be able to go through these amazing people and sort of like hear these things that they admire, enjoy, etc., and almost be able to compare a little bit. And the fact that that's coming across as a consistent answer, if I was a junior marketer listening in, I'm like, okay, that itself is interesting. But also, the practicality, like I think most of us will know or dread someone where you go into a meeting with them or you see it in the calendar and you're like, this is going to go on forever, and actually the inverse of that, of someone who is going to be like practical on it and stuff like that, is such an underrated skill. So thank you for speaking to that, because that's like really, really cool.
Well, when I learn how to do it, then I will come back and tell you the secrets. But
we will do a how to chair an excellent meeting session. That's really, really cool. Thank you. The next question, I hate the quickfire. I love the quickfire because we move on too quick and too slow. Is about your dream mentor. So if you were to have a dream mentor, who would they be and why?
from marketing or from the world?
Could be anybody.
We've had best friends, we've had parents,
Generally.
we've had business heroes, we've had colleagues, anyone ever.
I feel like this is probably a bit cliched, but I think Michelle Obama.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, I just think, I mean, she's just got brilliant energy, hasn't she? And she's sort of just carved out a role when she was First Lady in a way that I don't think anybody had really done before, and certainly hasn't really done to the same extent since. And she just had such she has such clear vision, and she felt like, I mean, she really, really made a difference. And I think she was such an extraordinary role model for so many people, but obviously particularly for women. So yeah, I'd love to learn from her. I think that would be amazing.
That's really cool. That's a lovely answer. It's a really lovely answer, and there's already a consistency in your answers as well about energy and how folks show up as well. So I love how you pick that up, aside from obvious achievements as well. So thank you.
If you've had mentors over the years, have you had a big lesson that you've learnt from somebody that's mentored you over the years?
I think so. I'm not sure that I would ever formally describe them as mentors, but I have had people who have been extremely influential, you know, in my career, I guess. And so my boss for a long time was a wonderful man called Malcolm White. He was the head of planning. Also, he was a kind of planning director or strategy director, as it now be called, when I was starting out as a creative strategist in agencies. And I kind of followed him around to kind of a couple of different agencies. And we ended up sharing an office for a while, which was hilarious because he was like the messiest individual that you could ever imagine. So they're just like, you had to literally sort of pick your way through the sort of piles of books and stuff. But he was a huge supporter and taught me loads about, you know, how to do the job and how to do and he was just very he was just incredibly supportive and always kind of very encouraging, but I learnt loads. And then I had a client actually who then subsequently became my business partner. So Mark Lund, he was the chief exec of the COI when I met him, and I can remember it was really funny. So I got this phone call from him, rather from his secretary, saying, "Oh, Mark Lund on the phone for you." And I'd never actually met him. I just done loads of work on kind of government-related business, and I can remember thinking, "Oh Christ, what have I done? Like, why is he calling me?" And so I basically got this phone call, and he said, "Yeah, I keep hearing your name around town, and I felt I ought to, you know, actually finally meet you." So I went to meet him, and we just hit it off amazingly, because he was, he just had this knack of being incredibly good at spotting when you say something interesting. So I've always said, so as a strategist, I was really good at finding interesting starting points, but always kind of just never quite felt confident enough to kind of really follow them through. And what Mark used to do was basically kind of go, "That's really interesting. Keep going with that. Where does that go?" And he'd just keep encouraging. And I always said, you know, he was very good at bringing out the best in me as a strategist, and kind of giving me the confidence to kind of just keep thinking and keep going with it. So he, you know, and over the years, you know, I still occasionally have a kind of cup of tea with him and stuff like that. But I've always really valued his sort of judgment and his, you know, and the fact that he's often kind of one step ahead, but will always kind of let you kind of keep going with it. Yeah, he's just, I guess, really intuitive, and that kind of, well, probably not intuition, but probably that kind of breadth and depth of experience that means that people are very good at picking up on stuff.
It's the best kind of mentor, because they're not telling you what to do; they're kind of just encouraging you to. Yeah,
but not in quite such a formal way as coaching, which I always find terribly frustrating when it's just like God, just tell me what the answer is. So I think I think that those kind of conversations are really interesting. So I guess as I said, it's never been a kind of formal thing, but just I kind of suppose I think about every conversation I have where I feel like I've really learnt something, or I come away from it thinking, wow, I hadn't thought about it like that before. And I think all of those are forms of mentoring. So actually, I would get that from, you know, like friends and from you know, like my Wackle buddies, sort of people like that.
Absolutely, and like, you know, one of our board members and great friends, Joe Royce, is in Wackle and speaks about it so often as, you know, an incredible source. And It's also fascinating just to hear you speak about those two people in your life, because you mentioned them teaching you things, but then you also mentioned confidence. It was a word that you used for both of them, and so I think it's just interesting to reflect on the phrasing of our question, really, because the question was about what have they taught you, which feels like a very sort of like straight line sort of question. But actually, I think there's almost something quite lovely in what did this mentor, or mentor in inverted brackets, give you, rather than teach you, and for you to use the word confidence in both of those sort of parts of the question is really quite lovely as well. And I think sometimes it can be too easy to go to the practical or the straight line answer, but for them to give you a gift of something to find within yourself is really quite lovely as well.
Yeah, I think it's so much at the heart of all kind of human relationships in a way, isn't it? Whether they're work related or friendship based. And actually, so there's a phrase, I don't know if Joe's ever mentioned this to you, but the WACL member proposition, which is defined brilliantly by another fantastic strategist, Joe Arden, who's superb, is stronger me, stronger we. So it speaks to this kind of, if we all get together, then we are stronger as a collective, but also you get strength as an individual from that. And fundamentally, that is really about, building stronger relationships, but kind of giving everybody confidence and rising everybody up through doing that. Yeah. So I think it is really, it's probably at the heart of all my relationships, I guess.
I love that so much. This is a really lovely episode. I love this. This is so cool. It's a real privilege to sit down with you. So thank you for already doing this. You get the warm fuzzies. I love it. It's really, really cool. So thank you. Last question for the quickfire is, what's one piece of marketing advice you wish you had earlier in your career? So is there anything that sort of stands out where you're like, 10 years ago?
So do you know what? I think actually it would be, when I was starting out, there was a less clear knowledge, sort of marketing science practice that kind of gave you some foundations and some rules. So I think that marketing in the era of accountability came out possibly in 2008, maybe a bit later, I can't remember. And that for me was that kind of first real sort of foundational thing where you go, oh, okay, here's the kind of basic checklist for how you do this stuff. And that was probably 12 years into my career, and I wish I'd had that almost as a kind of basic foundation. So because I can remember in my very first job as a planner in an agency, going to my boss and saying, this is really embarrassing, I don't quite know how to ask this question, but how do you do this? And she looked at me, she was like, how do you do what? And I was like, how do you do planning? Because there wasn't a kind of manual or a ton of textbook and stuff. And so she started, she brilliantly, she sat down and she started drawing little diagrams of, this is the planning cycle as invented by Jeremy Bullmore, and here's another little model. And actually what you realise was there were all these great kind of frameworks and ways of thinking, but at the time there wasn't the evidence, and there wasn't the sort of foundational stuff that one really hopes is now just kind of like the basic texts effectively of what we do.
Again, there's a consistency to the answer, but also a really lovely thing. And I know that I fall into the trap quite regularly of assuming the basics are basic, and I didn't have the basics either in the beginning of my career. And I remember doing tactics and spinning my wheels and sort of having that as what I thought marketing was, and it was, for me, the transformation point was the mini MBA, which I'll always credit Mr. Ritson for bringing to life, because I think it is fantastic. But it's almost like the skeleton or the framework or whatever it is to just hang your thinking off. But yeah, really lovely answer. So thank you.
See, I'm crediting you because I've learnt all my marketing from you.
Yeah, it's like passive smoking.
That's exactly. I didn't have to pay for the MBA. I've just asked you all the questions. Thinking about onto sort of the TV advertising side of things, and going a bit deeper into your world at ITV. I think a lot of marketers will look at TV as a traditional route, and if you were a mentor, how would you expand my view into what TV can do for a brand, and specifically around an SME? So that kind of medium size. We've got lots of people who are mid-level marketers in medium-sized companies. The average company out there. What's the opportunity that maybe people aren't quite thinking about?
So I'm going to, you mentioned Mark Ritson, I'm going to mention Mark Ritson again. So Mark did a brilliant talk at a ThinkBox event in September, which is called Vision. Right. ThinkBox is the marketing body for TV. And he came on stage and he basically did this thing where he effectively said, I kind of want you to imagine that I'm Steve Jobs. If I was Steve Jobs, this is how Steve Jobs would talk about TV. And he talked about it through the language of tech, but basically said this is the most extraordinary innovation. This is an extraordinary marketing, advertising channel where you have this enormous kind of creative canvas. It's got sound as well as vision, and you can reach millions and millions and millions of people. And it will work for you in the short term. And guess what? You get all of this extra long-term stuff for free. So you get all this amazing kind of branding, and as well as all the performance stuff. So he talked about it, but in a just a brilliant way. It's that kind of fantastic sort of thing. So I'd urge anybody who's out there who's kind of interested to kind of watch the Mark Ritson version of that, which he obviously does much better than me, at that talk. But I think the point that he was making is that, and you almost sort of framed it in the way you asked the question. So we are an industry, when I say an industry, I mean kind of marketing, that is completely obsessed with novelty. Right, so we love new stuff, right? We love, and particularly in my bit, the endless chat about media firsts, right? And actually, the problem that we have in TV is that we have been around for a bit, and we are a legacy media channel, and we're just not as exciting as some of the new stuff, but we still work unbelievably well. Yeah. So if you are, I think, a small to medium-sized business, TV can do extraordinary things for you. You have, without a doubt, you have to be kind of ready for TV. And by that, I mean, you have to have a business that you can scale, because actually, as soon as you put yourself on TV, you are reaching millions of people. And so actually, if you've got an ad that works, and if you've got a proposition that is really interesting, there's a danger that you can't meet the demand. So you have to be able to kind of be ready to sort of scale. But what you get with TV, is this fantastic creative canvas. So there is so much evidence that the single biggest driver of advertising effectiveness is creativity, and you have no better place to play that out than on TV. So you've got this extraordinary kind of creative vehicle. You've got a channel that is more trusted than any other advertising channel that you can think of. And part of that is because of the very deliberate friction that we put in place. So if you advertise on TV, your advertising is regulated. It's checked by Clearcast. And that is what drives the extraordinary high levels of trust that people have in TV advertising. So all of that trust is conferred on you as a brand. And then you have this kind of wonderful, huge channel that reaches millions of people. That means, as we all know, if we've read our marketing theory, best way to grow a brand is by reaching lots of people. Totally. And that's what it does. So there's loads that TV has to offer. I'll be absolutely frank, we haven't done a brilliant job of making it as accessible as we should do to smaller businesses, and that is now changing. Yeah. But I think if we can make that happen, then there's loads of ways that smaller businesses can benefit from TV.
I'd never thought of that as like the trust thing, because it's regulated.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds really obvious now, but the amount of things I get served on social media that I'm like,
yeah, but it couldn't happen.
Is this a bit of a, you end up clicking on a product on TikTok or whatever, and I'm like, where's this coming from? Wants me to pay in euros. This doesn't feel.
And it literally couldn't happen on TV. So it is, that environment, that curated environment, which is also the other thing is brand safe, right? So you're as an advertiser, your content will never appear next to something unpleasant or dodgy, because we have total control over the content that appears on the channel. But the trust point is one that I think people take for granted. Yeah. And also there's a ThinkBox sort of talk about this a lot, but there's the effect that it's behavioural science effect, and obviously I've now forgotten the name of it, but it will come back to me. But essentially, costly signalling, that's it. So essentially, the fact that you have made the effort, the fact that there is still a perception that to be on TV, you have to be a proper brand, that confers, again, kind of premiumness, if you like, on a brand. And of course, now all of the barriers that used to be there, so the very high creative cost, for example, which was something that put off a lot of brands, those have now essentially been taken away by AI and by just much more sort of democratization of a video. So you can shoot an ad on an iPhone if you want to.
Yeah. And so I'd love to follow up on that, because it feels like in the answer there's like.
Sorry, I probably spouted like loads of stuff.
No, it's really interesting.
You know what's really lovely is you genuinely come across as excited about it as well, which is really, really nice, and so like just to observe that is in itself, I think, a really important behaviour for folks observing leaders. So like I admire that. And in the answer though, it feels like there's a dichotomy that almost exists in your world a little bit, which is the costly signalling is the reach of millions and millions, and then something you pointed out about partway through the answer there about sort of like accessibility and making this available for SMEs and stuff like that. And if I was a marketing manager in a company who's trying to build that case out, and I still hold that perception of it is expensive, or the reach is way too broad for my regional business or something like that. I mean,
so should I break it down?
I'm interested in that micro macro sort of opportunity.
So if you take the cost of the media, so buying the space. So the first thing that really always surprises people is we have probably I think about 2,000 advertisers who advertise with ITV. If you look at the whole of the TV, if you look at all broadcasters, it's probably about 8,000 in total.
Right.
But of the 2,000 that advertise with us, more than 50% of them spend less than £50,000 a year on their TV campaign, on their media.
Great.
And so actually we already have kind of quite a long tail of advertisers, and the ones that most people will be familiar with are the ones that are spending the most money with us. But actually you can, we have advertisers who advertise in some of the regions who spend probably only £10,000-20,000 a year. And ITV is essentially a national company that's made up of, I'm going to get this wrong now, 13 or 14 maybe?
We'll overdub it.
I actually don't know. So let's say like low teens numbers of TV companies that have merged over the years. And each of those companies is based in a region, and each of those regions is a place where you can advertise on TV. So, we have a lot of, so we have Ulster TV, which is obviously Northern Ireland, Tyne Tees, Border, Granada, all of these different names, which will be very familiar to people if they've watched, regional news and things like that. They are that legacy of ITV's regional footprint is also what enables people to advertise regionally and in smaller areas. Right. And then you add in ITVX, which is our streaming service, and like any digital channel, if you want to advertise to 5 postcodes, you can advertise to 5 postcodes, right? If you want to pinpoint, people who are in a particular postcode, and are in the, actually, here's a lovely example, and are heavy gin buyers, and you are, for example, I don't know, makers of tonic, you can advertise to heavy gin buyers, in an area within a footfall around a local supermarket that happens to stock your tonic, for example.
Nice.
So TV has evolved over the years to enable you to put as many targeting variables around your campaign as you would like to, just like you do with kind of digital campaigns. Or there is this wonderful legacy of the regional sort of footprint of ITV that means actually you can just say, I just want to advertise in the border area as a test, or because my business is based there, and that makes it much more affordable. So actually it is surprisingly much more affordable from a media perspective than people might think. And we also, all of us, all 3 broadcasters have, frankly, incredibly good incentives for first-time advertisers, because we're all in the business of helping people get onto TV, hoping it will work for them, making sure it works, it was as much as likely to work as it can be, and then they'll come back for more. So everybody offers really strong financial incentives for first-time advertisers.
It's great. Like, I was thinking about, so years ago I used to work in the removal industry, years and years ago, and I moved house a few weeks ago, and so did my neighbours, and I said, how did you choose your removal company? And they were like, oh, they sent me a little checklist of things that I had to do through the post. So they'd picked up sold subject to contract on Rightmove. They'd gone, this house is just sold, send them something in the post and a fridge magnet. So we've got the number of the removal company on there, like highly targeted local advertising. And if you can choose a postcode and you are a removal company, a window cleaning business, whatever it may be, that local, an optician, an independent optician, how wonderful to be able to go, I'm just going to serve my local community an advert that's relevant to them. Like, what a powerful thing to do. Like, yes, you can do that on social media, but like if you're watching, like scrolling past an ad versus, you know, having an ad on halfway through. I don't know what's on ITV. Emmerdale? I don't watch Emmerdale. Give me a programme quick.
I'm a celeb.
I got a favourite programme.
Yeah. But the creative side of things is the other really interesting one, because that can be as cost prohibitive, or it used to be certainly, as the media side of things. But now, AI is completely transforming that side of the equation. So, for and only for kind of very small and medium-sized businesses, we have an AI ad service where you can make an ad for £200 or £300, and it will use your existing assets. So basically, scrape your website. You can give it your logo, whatever. If you've got any video assets, fantastic. We're training the model so that it's Clearcast compliant. So it basically will only write you an ad that will then be hopefully kind of get through the Clearcast process. So that again, it's not that kind of advertising is not ever going to win awards, but again, it's good enough to kind of get you on TV. And again, we have one of the things that I did when I got to ITV was form a partnership with an organisation called System One, who are well known in advertising circles. They do lots of pre-testing, and we have built with them a database of thousands of ads, where we have essentially a kind of score that that is a sort of predictor, or at least an indicator of the degree to which that creative is kind of likely to work. And there's a lot of learnings that come out of that about what works. And again, what we can do is essentially help advertisers and help the people that we're working with write ads using AI software that conforms to some of those kind of essentially just rules of how to make sort of successful advertising. So there's a lot of stuff in play that will, again, can kind of help on the creative side. And then the other brilliant little innovation, which is my favourite thing that we're doing at the moment, is pause ads on ITVX. So if you're watching...
They're actually really cool.
They're so much fun. They're so much fun. So when you hit pause, if you're watching something, it will bring up an ad, and you can, just like with all of the conventional TV advertising, you can layer as much targeting on that as you want to. But the creator for it is basically a digital poster. So essentially it's a JPEG. So if you can design a PowerPoint slide, you can have a pause ad.
It's a really clever use of a behaviour.
Well, there's one I remember seeing which was for a toilet cleaner product, and
that's a great time to
exactly. And it's just like I think I did a LinkedIn post about it. People can go back in history, so I'm not just sort of blowing smoke for the sake of it. I mean, like, I posted about it because it was striking, and it was such a clever implementation.
Yeah, so you can do contextual stuff like that, or so I think around a third of our pause ad advertisers, it's the first time they've ever advertised on TV.
Interesting.
And that's because one of those barriers, which is the kind of difficulty of putting together a TV ad, is just gone. Just use a poster.
I mean, it's
PowerPoint really, slide.
Well, yeah, and it's like, it is interesting because before this conversation, I feel like we're advertising TV. We're not even supposed to, but it's just genuinely interesting. Like, if there were two halves to this equation, which was media spend and creative, the fact that has sort of been removed, well, not removed as a barrier, but there's an accessible route to that is fabulous. I want to pick up on something that you mentioned earlier around the think box sort of examples and stuff like that, because I think something we can be guilty of, and I'm pointing the fingers at James and I, and the marketing industry in general, is when we find ourselves in a specialist area, we assume knowledge for everyone. And, you know, when it comes to like even stuff like long and short, you know, sort of, you know, all that sort of stuff. And so I think a fallacy potentially that could exist around TV advertising is that it's just there for awareness and for reach sort of stuff. How, if someone comes to you and sort of says, you know, I'm interested in potentially doing this, but I just don't want to do just the reach thing because, you know, what's the point? How do you handle those kind of conversations? And I guess I'm placing myself in the mentor concept, who's then having to prove it to their boss. Yeah. Sort of say.
So you've done your homework, haven't you? Because this is my pet subject. So for a long time, so the honest truth of this is, for a long time, TV didn't have to work very hard to sell itself.
Right.
Okay, it's why TV was traded. It was never really sold. So actually, all we did was basically say to people, you reach millions of people. Yeah. Give us loads of cash. You can reach millions of people, and then, you know, you'll see the effectiveness.
Nice.
And that's worked for ages.
Yeah.
Then along came the platforms. And the platforms have done an extraordinary job of making their advertising incredibly accountable. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they used to have some fairly dodgy models. There used to be quite a lot of, guess what, people who search for lawnmowers go on to buy lawnmowers. You know, now their models are very good, and they will, you know, obviously try and calculate incremental sales off the back of search and all those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And that's what we call, I guess, kind of outcome measurement. So eyeball measurement is, let's all argue about how many millions of people saw your ad. Outcome measurement is, what do people do as a result? Now, one of those outcomes might be brand awareness, and that was for a long time, you know, enough, you know, for TV and so on. But, you know, these days, with the growth of performance marketing, which is frankly the most brilliant bit of rebranding of, you know, basically direct marketing, DM. You know, it's brilliant. But with the growth of that, and with the compelling metrics that come along with it, you know, I think TV has done itself a disservice. So we are getting into the outcomes game, and what that means is that we are building, and I want to say we, it's not just ITV. So this is a radical collaboration with our friends at Channel 4 and at Sky. We are all building measurement capabilities that enable us to show to advertisers, when you advertise on TV, this is what happens in terms of your web traffic, in terms of search, in terms of conversions. Even so, I've got a team of brilliant and terrifyingly clever data scientists, and they have just built a model that shows how advertising on TV affects price sensitivity, and therefore basically increases your margin. So it's not about volume sales, it's about basically defending your price in the wake of kind of lots of competition.
Interesting.
So we are not far away from being able to say, when you advertise on TV, this is what you can expect to see in terms of performance. So actually we have a tool which is called Outcomes Planner. Does exactly what it says on the tin.
Nice, we call that company the Marketing Meetup. So
yeah,
we can't judge.
Fans of that. But essentially what you do is you tell it what category you're in, you tell it how much money you think you've got to spend, and it will tell you what you can expect in terms of, you know, website traffic uplift, for example, off the back of, at the moment, about 700 causal models that we've used from kind of previous experience and other brands and all those sorts of things. But over time, we will continue to build that out. So there is a thing that we're doing with Channel 4 and Sky, which is called Lantern, which is a big collaborative effort, which is a panel. So panels are great, because when you have lots of people on a panel, you can track their behaviour over a long period of time. So you can see what they do in the short term, and in the near term, and in the long term. And Lantern, which is going to be in beta next year, we hope will get to the point where it can measure most of the impact that is generated by TV advertising for most advertisers. Wow. So TV measurement is absolutely transforming. Yeah. So the accountability of TV as an advertising channel is going to get much, much better. So we have been dependent for a long time on like brilliant econometric studies done by people like ThinkBox and stuff like that. But if you're an advertiser, what you really want is to know, how is your campaign performing? Exactly. And actually you've got very used to being told that by the platforms, and actually what we want to do in TV is say, okay, this is how your TV campaign is performing. And the brilliant, lovely additional benefit that you get from TV is that it's a fantastic, what we call kind of like multiplier medium. So so often actually small and medium-sized businesses, and particularly digital native brands, will come to us and go, there's something really weird going on. So I've noticed that when I'm on TV, my CPAs in like social go down.
Yeah.
Why is that? To which the answer is, well, because actually what TV does is it just lifts everything. It's the kind of rising tide that lifts all boats. And so once you have those kind of slightly more holistic forms of measurement in place, we can point to all of these effects that TV has. So yeah, it's
it sounds like
you wanted a short answer, you got a really long one.
Well, no,
sorry.
but I guess this is akin to. It's interesting when you use the rising tide analogy. You know, in effect, it seems very similar to how often folks will speak about brand. You know, and sort of stuff like that. But it's fascinating to sort of see and hear that. And I guess with the tools, which sound so exciting, presumably quite a lot of it is just validating in a model-driven way everything you're seeing on an anecdotal level, and everything you know to be true from sort of living and breathing in that world. But it's a nice way to present that to someone who hasn't been in that world. So
but also giving people what they now get routinely, which is kind of table stakes if you're an advertiser who's using paid social or search, you know. And also I think it's what we need to do as a channel to kind of really sort of prove our case. So it's a bit boring, but you know, it's essentially it's sort of.
I think it's really exciting. Like I'm sitting here thinking, you know, if TV was making its comeback, like that's the missing piece. That's the only thing that the social channels have gotten you, really, is like, but you can't prove that. Well, now we can.
Yeah, well, it's sort of, we talk about it as kind of full funnel influence of
it's amazing.
So it's, you know, you get kind of culture and conversation. That's when you use TV at its most powerful to kind of really drive sort of national conversation. You know, you get that kind of multiply medium effect, and you get kind of performance power. And then the lovely additional bit, which is the sort of, you know, we have a phrase where we say, you know, if you advertise with ITV, good things happen. And the good thing that happens, which you don't get with the platforms, is that trust and transparency that we sort of talked about earlier.
That's funny. So that phrase, this is a very tangential conversation, but when I was 16, I was canvassing to be head boy at my school, and we had to give a speech. There's 1,200 people in the school, and I stood at the front, and my brother and sister were in the school as well. And so I said, if you vote for Joe Glover, good things will happen. And then they stood up and threw sweets into the school. Brilliant. And the next year, throwing sweets into the audience was banned. So,
did you become head boy?
I became head boy.
So did I. Yeah, we were both head boys.
Oh, what swots we are!
Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
What? No. Everyone's like going, all right, skip this episode. Brilliant. If we, you know, there's going to be a lot of CMOs out there, or you know, marketing managers out there who've never touched TV. They've kind of had all their career on, you know, performance stuff, on, you know, gaining customers through SEO or now GEO or through social. And today we've planted the seed in their head that this could be the next big opportunity for them. Where would you, if you were mentoring somebody in that role, how would you introduce them into the world of TV advertising? Do you find that people come in and go, I'm just going to test like adverts for a day, or do people go, do you know what, I'm going to do this for 3 months, or are people going, right, well, it's TV, so I'm going for the, you know, the long term, because we know we're not going to make an impact in the short, or like, I'd be interested to see how people.
So what we tend to do is we say start by doing a geo test, and actually the
sorry, what's geo?
Geo, sorry, as in geography. So start by doing kind of, so testing in a region.
Yeah.
And a lot of people come to us and say, well, shouldn't I be advertising on ITVX? That's your kind of clever digital, and you can do that, and that's fine. But actually, if you are a brand that has a big enough footprint in a particular region, to make it viable to start using kind of broadcast advertising, that's what we would normally always recommend. And the reason for that is that it's fantastically good value, and you can really see those good things happen, right? So, you know, it's really, so sometimes it's really lovely because you can see, you know, you see an ad go out, and then literally you can just, I've sort of, you know, had founders who sort of run me up and go, "Oh my God, my web traffic's going mad!" And it's because
That's cool.
because you get this, this mass simultaneous reach,
Yeah.
which is, so you can really see those kind of peaks and those sort of spikes. So we would always recommend that if that people start small. Because obviously, if it, for the first time, it does feel like you're signing on the dotted line, and it's a lot of money. So we would advise them to start small. We would advise them to, if they can start within a region, or create a kind of small test on ITVX. We have lots of different programs where we would work very closely with those businesses if they want us to. So, for example, we will wrap measurement around all of those campaigns so that we are very clear with people that, if you do it in the way that we recommend, if you see an impact, we can be very certain that that's a statistically significant uplift, and we can kind of measure that for people. And what we would also do is say, start by testing the channel, and start with creative that is obviously compliant, but don't worry too much about getting it perfect first time. But actually, so one of the things that we sometimes do is say to people, if you're nervous about your creative, spend a tiny amount of money on YouTube, because and just sort of see what works there, and then you can transfer that onto TV.
Nice.
Or what we can do is we can set them up with System 1. If they want to sort of spend a bit more time and kind of try and get it, something that they want to invest a little bit more in. But the rule is always start small, test, and I think the thing that I always say to people is, don't expect it to be perfect first time, right? So when you start with a new channel, you'd never start with social and expect it to be at its most efficient immediately, but people often forget that. And the same is true of TV. So what I would say, the first time you use it, if you see an effect, that's a great indication that you can make it work really hard, but you can probably make it more efficient and more effective because you will learn more about how it works for you. So it's always a kind of journey, and so it's always about, as I say, starting small and then kind of growing from that base.
What's silly is like, I'm being quite rude because it relates to your answer, but it doesn't wholly relate to your answer. But I'm listening to you speak, and like, from time to time, I think we should go on Dragon's Den, not because I want any money. I mean, I don't want any money from them, and but I'm like, that exposure would be great for the and stuff like that. And it's like, well, there's another way in there. You don't have to go on Dragon's Den and do a fake pitch for some money you don't actually want. You could actually just,
You just do it on go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is, funny. Anyway, by the by, I'm interested in some of your experience here, and I mean, the whole list has been about experience, really. But what have you any ideas in your brain? If I say, have you seen any examples of smaller or medium-sized businesses sort of doing a really great job on telly? It might be using some of the principles that you've already spoken about. But are there any examples or moments or principles that sort of come to mind of those sort of brands making the most of the opportunities that are sort of before them when offered on telly? Yeah,
I mean, there's. I'm just trying to think about. Okay, so here's a range of things that I guess are interesting. So so Charlotte Tilbury, right? So quite, it's a brilliant makeup brand, now huge, but sort of 4 or 5 years ago, we put them on TV for the first time, and they went on air with an ad which was just for one product, which was really well chosen. Actually, this is another really good tip for first-time advertisers. So often people come and go, I'm going to do a really classy brand ad. And that's kind of fine, but actually, if you really want to prove to your finance director that TV works, if you have a kind of killer product, and Charlotte Tilbury knew that she had a brilliant product because every time she talked about it on telly, like if she was doing PR or something, and I, for the life of me, can't remember which one it was, but it would just fly off the shelves, and it was at a kind of price point which was sort of like 25 quid, which is sort of like perfectly priced for a sort of Christmas present sort of time thing. Nice. And so they just made a really simple ad, which was basically her talking about this product. Played it out on it, and this was the one where we were like, "Are you sure you're ready for this? Because it might go nuts." And sure enough, we could prove in that first campaign that it drove huge numbers of online sales. It drove offline sales as well, so their footfall into kind of stores improved, and that gave them the confidence to kind of really grow their campaign. So that's really interesting. That's kind of health and beauty space. Butternut Box, subscription dog food. So they work with we have a little team called Adventures, and they specialise in digital native brands and kind of really kind of working with them on a kind of almost like a kind of incubator basis. So kind of very sort of long-term relationships. We lean in and give them lots and lots of support. And Butternut Box are one of their sort of original customers, and again started with a really small test, and have now grown their business through TV advertising. And they started just with ITV, now they're across lots of broadcasters. So that's another example. Nice. And then at the opposite end of the spectrum, I mean, again, sort of pause ads just so good if you just want to dip your toe in the water. Yeah. But we have wonderful businesses. So my ridiculous bad joke is always there's an escape room, I think, in Belfast, which is like a prison escape, and then the next sort of example ad is the Northumbrian police. The police hot on the heels of the
cool.
of the. But they, I mean, like one is just a little, one is literally a kind of little experience, and the other one is a kind of recruitment ad for.
Love that.
So all sorts of different advertisers, and those are both obviously very tailored regional campaigns for those sort of two particular things.
I always think of my mate who runs a window cleaning business, and I feel like there's a wonderful creative there of a dirty TV screen, with just like a corner of something. Yeah.
I love that, and like there's obviously, if you've got creative people in your business, there's a world of opportunity, because you've said anything like a pause ad is not an expensive thing to do if you've got a great idea. Are there things that you see small brands doing that big brands either can't do or miss because they're thinking too big? So
actually, A/B tests or regional tests are a really good example, because I think so it's much harder if you're a big established brand and you're using loads and loads and loads of channels to construct a test that's actually going to work.
Of course.
So one of the really difficult things we have is with those bigger brands. when they're really keen to sort of prove. So we're having conversations with one now. And they're a national advertiser, and if you're a national advertiser, there's only two ways that you can do a regional test. You either spend more money in one region, or you take a region off air. Yeah. And if you're a national advertiser, nobody wants to be the marketing director who said, "Oh, I'm really sorry, you lot over there, you're not getting any support this month," or whatever. So you have to find a way to fund that difference, and sometimes we can help, but it's obviously tricky. Whereas if you're a smaller business starting from a smaller base, it's much easier to construct a test also, because obviously small things make a kind of really big difference. So you have to be very careful statistically to make sure that it all adds up, but that's why we have teams of lovely pointy-headed data scientists who can help make sure that that's the case. But actually those tests are sometimes easier to construct if you are a smaller business, and if you are able to kind of add on a region or take away, or just be a bit more playful in how you.
I suppose if you're selling toothpaste or bread, it's kind of like, well, you don't want to sell it in the West Midlands.
It's not impossible. So we did do a regional test for a quite big fashion retailer, and they did take the quite tricky decision to come off air for 3 weeks in one region, and it was brilliant for them and for us, because basically in that 3 weeks what we could show was that their web traffic declined, their in-store footfall declined, their conversions declined, their CPAs and social went up, and when you layered all of that on, what we could show is that TV was basically paying back £15 for every £1 that they spent.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it was so that was kind of brave, but actually it really made a difference, and it made such a difference that they were very happy to.
And that's amazing that it'll do that in a. How long did you say?
Well, that was just for 3 weeks, but they were a sort of fast fashion type kind of retailer. So I think very driven by promotions and like sort of footfall.
Isn't that amazing though, that you can see that kind of impact in 3 weeks by not doing something rather than doing something?
Yeah. It's funny because like the second episode of this podcast was with the CMO of Meta, and one of his biggest things, he's got like 2 rules for digital marketing, and one of them is incrementality. That idea that I'm not teaching you anything here, but the idea that if you engage in some marketing activity, then it would have an outweighed benefit to doing it than lasting effect. I've bungled that definition for sure, but the idea being that you're additive through your marketing activity.
So all marketing measurement should be about incrementality.
Totally.
It's hard. It's really hard to do well,
Totally.
and that's the tricky thing. But actually, so interestingly, when we are designing regional tests or geo tests, some of the code base that we use is the open source code that Meta wrote for their geo tests. It's really good.
Great. Well, yeah.
And it's open source, so
Absolutely.
and it provides consistency. So so we're all in this game, and and we all trying desperately to kind of help people measure the impact of what is a really increasingly kind of complex and sophisticated media ecosystem.
Totally.
I was going to ask the community question, but I didn't write it down. So have you got it in front of you?
You know what, mate? No. I actually do, but shall we just let you stew on it for a bit?
Can do. I'm the one editing this video, so I can cut it out.
That's true. That is true. So thank you for everything so far. You've been so wonderful, like really, really informative. Like, I kind of hate it because I know that like we're going to get excited over Christmas thinking about like how we can do a TV ad now. So like,
I'm already there. I've already got 3 ideas in my head.
I know I'll get them on Slack on Sunday.
Tonight. On the way home.
So to hopefully bring together a lot of the learnings that we've had so far in this, then we always try to bring a community scenario into the interviews, and so. This one, I'll read it out to you and see. The objective here is not to get direct advice necessarily, but just to hear how it processes through your mind and the sort of steps that sort of come to mind. So the scenario is, I'm a marketing leader whose business has grown beyond performance channels. TV feels like the next exciting opportunity, but it's also the first time I'm being asked to choose from several possible paths. Not just optimize what already exists. So as my mentor, how would you help me think through the options and choose a path that both fits our ambition and our reality?
Okay, so the multiple paths would be...
Totality of marketing, it would seem. So I guess maybe another way of asking the question would be, you're presented with the opportunity to double down with like out of home or... and it's not so much a comparison between the channels, but like, what would be the use case where someone's like, I'm exploring my options now and TV is one of them?
Yeah. How would I think about that?
Yeah. Okay,
so I guess the first thing I would do is say, are you really clear about what you want to achieve? Mm-hmm. So what are your objectives? And I guess it's astonishing to me often that people don't have clarity about that. Yeah. So it goes back to what is the problem you're trying to solve? So is it that you don't seem to be able to get any more growth out of your social channels, and you've got aspirations to kind of grow the brand. So you want more users, more customers, but you just don't seem to be able to get any more through what you're currently doing. So you've got to add something new. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, then I guess the next step I would say, okay, so we're all about brand growth. We're all about trying to find new customers. Then I obviously look at the kind of profile of the brand. Yeah. What sort of people. Mm-hmm. And where do you find them? Now, if it's in a particularly kind of tight niche, it might be that there is an opportunity in a different marketing channel that is a bit more efficient. But if it's if it's a brand with relatively speaking mass market opportunities, then you go, okay, we're in the broadcast business. It might be TV, it might be outdoor, and I guess then what I would start doing is if I had an agency. And I guess we assume that you probably don't have an agency.
I think that
probably it's probably all in house. So I would then start having some exploratory calls with media owners direct, and I think that can often be quite a scary thing, maybe for a sort of small medium-sized business. But most media owners have direct sales arms, and most of them are delighted to sort of chat to people. So I would. I mean, you could obviously do a lot of homework exploring all of the different options, but I mean, I would strongly recommend just like get on the phone, set up a meeting, have a conversation with them, and be very. The other thing is, I suppose the thing that I'm often really intrigued by is people are quite maybe it's not unusual, but quite wary of sort of sharing what they're trying to achieve. And what I would say is, if you sit where I sit, I can't really help you unless I really understand your business. So the more that you can tell me, and I'm happy to sign whatever bits of paper you need me to, the better.
Yeah.
So the more you can tell me about your customers, the more you can tell me about your brand, the more you can tell me about your growth ambitions, the more data you're happy to share with us, because we can then do all of the hard work to say, okay, this is what a campaign might look like, based on the kind of budget that you tell me that you've got. And because we've now got a snazzy little outcome planner, this is what you might be able to expect to see.
Totally.
So I think clarity of objectives is what I would start with, and I'd spend some proper time thinking about that. And then really good understanding of the brand and the customer, and then hopefully that will narrow down the options.
Perfect.
That's
Thank
a great
you.
answer.
Yeah.
And I think you should call your outcome planner the snazzy outcome planner.
Snazzy with the outcome planner.
I think you get a much higher take up customers. Like, ooh, snazzy outcome planner.
I'm imagining like a star,
Full ITV jazz hat.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for all of your answers. Like, I feel like I could talk to you all day because I find the whole topic absolutely fascinating. One of the things that we do, or we've started to do, is to get our guests to ask a question to the next guest. And we spoke with a brilliant lady called Jessica, who's the CMO of Asana. And she had the question of what's the marketing best practice you ignored, and why breaking the rules worked for you in your favour. And I wondered whether you might be able to answer that one.
So I'm going to be really annoying and answer the question slightly differently, actually, because I look after commercial marketing at ITV, but I've only done that for like a kind of year or so properly, and actually I've sort of done the opposite, because I think there are a lot of principles of good branding and marketing that we hadn't applied previously, and some like really like things that looked to me, when I looked at it, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we do this. So a really good example is we had like just a really disparate kind of like look and feel. So we didn't have any kind of consistency about how we presented ITV media. And we've got this incredibly powerful viewer brand, and yet we were sort of trying to do something different over here. So I've basically gone, I think we should sort of be doing more about what they're doing over there. So there's that kind of really basic sort of like, let's actually have some consistency, because that will help our, like everybody has heard of ITV, but ITV media, which is the thing that you buy when you're buying sort of airtime with us, I think we should do a more kind of consistent job. And so I've also started thinking about kind of brand architecture, and again, which is kind of quite a basic thing. And then the other thing is, again, so a lot of B2B marketing is very event driven, and those are our really big sort of, I guess, big events sort of during the year are our kind of key points. But actually, one of the things that I really wanted to do is say, let's think about not just those moments in time, because most of our marketing spend goes on basically 2 or 3 massive events, and then that's it. Wow. But actually, what happens if we were to think about a campaign that could run through all of those things? So we get a little bit more consistency, we have a little bit more opportunity to kind of keep the conversation going. So I've sort of almost done the opposite so far, as what I've done is taken some of the kind of basic principles and said, let's see what happens if we begin to apply some of those things. Similarly, testing. We've never done any testing.
But it was really interesting you prefix the answer by sort of saying, you'll answer it in a slightly different way. But I think what's fascinating is to hear an experience of someone who's almost had that canvas to come in and almost do the 20% of actions, the 20% which has the 80% of effect type of thing. And that comes from experience, knowledge, and et cetera, et cetera. So actually to hear that as an answer as well, it's really, really fabulous. So thank you. The last question is for us to ask you to donate a question to the next CMO, and we don't know who that is yet.
Yeah.
And so, is there a question that comes to mind that we could ask the next person coming along? So
my question would be, what is the best bit of career advice you've been given, and why? And then why would you pay that forward to your listeners?
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Kate, you've been wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking with us and spending the time with us. Like a really, really brilliant episode. So
great.
Right from the off.
Yeah.
That was great. It's been lots of fun. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Not at all.